Hey guys, it's HelpingHans here, and today I'm going to bring you a build order for the Terror Battlegroup in Company Heroes 3. Oh shit! So then guys, before we get into the nitty gritty of the Terror Battlegroup, we're going to give you guys an overview of it. So this is what it looks like here. So on the right hand side, you've got weapon superiority. You have the incredible and overpowered, frankly, cloaked machine gun camouflage you get right at the start of the game, costing 0 command points, so you can get it straight away. As soon as you build your first machine gun, they will have the ability to cloak while in cover. You can or opt to go for heavy gunnery, so this gives you the ability to activate an ability on your some of your vehicles to give them the ability to suppress. So that's 221, 251, Stug, 3G, and the Panzer IV, as well as the King Tiger. Then you've got option to go for Defend the Fatherland. This will give you, in friendly territory, lasts 45 seconds, 75% damage reduction, and a 50% bonus accuracy of rate of fire, which is, and that is for each missing squad member. So as you know, that'll work well on not like standard Grens, because they have quite 6 men, and as they lose more men, they'll obviously you do better when that's active. You've also got active a passive, which is no quarter. So infantry within range of 18 of a suppressed or pinned infantry units gain 25% more accuracy. And then you've got the King Tiger for 9 command points later on in the game, which is a beefy tank, can take a lot of punishment and strong frontal armor. However, it does reduce your fuel income by 50%. Personally, I'm just going to say now that I don't rate currently the King Tiger as it stands in this current patch. I think it's not worth going for, and I'd recommend probably just getting a few Panzer IVs out instead, and then probably going for the left-hand side of this tree. Then you've got Terror Tactics. What I generally go for probably is Interrogate. This is a nice way to gain vision on the map when you interrogate a casualty that has fallen, and it will also stop the enemy medics from picking those guys up, as I'll show you guys later on. The casualty is killed when the interrogate is finished, and the squad receives 230 experience. That's also a way to gain your guys extra experience during the fight. You've also got an opportunity to go for Contempt for the Weak. So infantry squads gain 20% rate of fire, 33% decapture speed for 15 seconds when a nearby enemy unit retreats within 18 range. Effects refresh if the enemy unit retreats while the bonus is active. Then you have the option to go for either Jericho Trumpet or Propaganda War. Basically, this is like an off-map which reduces enemy unit speed by 35% and accuracy by 15, lasts for 45 seconds. And the Propaganda Leaflet will force enemy units to retreat. And that will include kind of even like anti-tank guns that don't normally retreat, apart from 17-pounders. But yeah, it will force those units to retreat back to base, which can be really handy if you want to pop that on top of maybe a victory point to stop your opponent capturing a victory point, or just forcing their support weapons off the field to then give you a good chance to push the front line. And then finally here we have the V1 Rocket Strike for 250 munitions, 4 command points here. Probably the best off-map in the game at the moment. It doesn't leave any red flares when you drop it on the ground, so your opponents need to be paying attention to the audio cues when it is deployed. And I'll go into that later and explain how effective this is later on in the video. Right, so how do you start playing Terror? So you immediately select it, and what I would do is go for machine gun camouflage straight away. You'll be building yourself your tier 1, and you'll be getting your machine gun out. You'll first probably get your machine gun out, and also possibly recommend getting yourself a second Pioneer. Now, the reason why you want 2 Pios is because these guys generally have more vision than your standard machine gun, and they're going to be acting as scouts for your machine gun as you push up to the field. So if I just quickly turn the fog of war off real quick here, so you can see as I'm pushing forward, my Pioneers are gaining vision for the machine guns. If I pull back here, that's basically the machine gun's kind of normal rate vision, but it can shoot quite a lot further. So if I set it up here, you can see it can shoot all the way up to here. It's going to lose its camouflage now because it wasn't fully in cover. But that's why you want these kind of Pioneers. You want these guys spread out in front of your machine gun, giving the machine gun full kind of vision and to give it full range on any incoming units. And therefore, you'll be also be able to set up ambushes. You can maybe bait the enemy units that might be chasing your Pioneers back into the line of fire of your machine gun. So you'll be sending these Pioneers out, maybe one on the left flank, one on the right flank to start capping and moving a machine gun forward. So once you've got your first machine gun out, you'd probably want to, you could go for a second one straight away, but I would like generally to get myself a Gren next. And this Grenadier is important because if you do find that your machine gun does get flanked, you've got your Grenadier there to help fend off any kind of flanking unit that might be trying to push it. Let's say you've got a dingo that gets behind it or something there. If at least you've got a grenadier there, your grenadier can be focusing that dingo while your machine gun maybe repositions to get into some better cover. But the idea with where you're playing with these cloaked machine guns is that you're pushing up into some cover like this, and then wait until you see that symbol. That means they're going to benefit from that cover, the camouflage, because all the models are in cover there. And then you jump to the next point, and if you jump to the next point within a certain amount of time, you will retain that camouflage. That way you can creep from one piece of cover to the next piece, like so. Just keep them all the ways trying to hug that wall there to keep that kind of, as long as you see that cover symbol there, they'll be retaining that kind of camouflage, and then that way you can sneak it all the way from here, basically all the way up to a frontline position without your opponent knowing, and that way you can get some really good ambushes off on units. Now the machine gun, the best thing about these things is they gain the 25% damage and 40% accuracy when firing from camouflage for 5 seconds. So that allows you to absolutely shred any kind of infantry squad that's caught out in the open with this. Even if the squad was kind of on some light cover, you'll be doing some decent damage to them as well. So, and basically, it would force just an immediate retreat of any unit that it kind of catches out in the open. Because if they don't retreat, they're going to take maybe half health damage at least from those 5 seconds of that MG firing. You can also put your MG on hold fire as well if you wanted to do that, to allow maybe your opponent to get a little bit closer so that you can get even more damage in, because the closer they are, obviously the more accurate your machine gun is going to be. So what we're going to do is we'll get this rifleman to attack, move into this area. Enemy, and we've got the pioneer forward giving vision for the machine gun. We're going to back away, try and bait this rifleman squad forward, and then when they're kind of out in the open here, turn off the whole fire, and you can see, look at that damage. And then you get the pioneer in when the squad is suppressed. Any kind of squad that's suppressed won't be doing much damage at all, so you can get your pioneer squad into that there to do some nice damage to that rifleman squad as well. And you can see, if that person didn't bother to retreat, they're going to lose that squad very quickly. So overall, you can see there how effective that kind of machine gun was at doing a lot of damage. If it wasn't in camouflage and it was out in the open, it wouldn't do nearly as much damage. It would probably suppress just as quickly, but it's just it's that initial damage that does. That's the big kicker there for the machine guns, which makes them really, really strong. So once you've got, so far you've got 2 pioneers, you've got a Gren, a machine gun. I'd probably get maybe the second machine gun out after that, and then probably another grenadier. So 2 MGs, 2 Grens. 1 MG gets flanked. The second one can maybe be further back and covering its flanking angle, for instance, as well, so they can both protect each other. So don't feel afraid to have machine guns nearby each other to provide supporting fire. Second Gren, you want a couple of grenadiers, I would always say, because you want the ability to use Panzerfaust to fight light vehicles later on. The ability to merge. Let's say your machine gun loses a couple of models here. Let's just kill off a couple of dudes. Let's say, you want to keep your machine gun on the field, but you don't want to retreat it. You can use a grenadier to merge into that machine gun to keep it on the field. And also, later, when they get Veteran C1, they'll have the ability to do the restore 5.0 health per second for 25 seconds with their med kits. And any unit nearby that's maybe taking some damage here, let's just lower everyone's health a bit here. And let's say these guys managed to get Vet 1. We pop the heal here. And any unit, even friendly teammate units that are nearby and low health, they can benefit from this heal. So, great way to keep your field presence, and then you always want to have healthy squads, because if you've got healthy squads, they're not going to be losing men, and you're not going to be reinforcing as much, which is super important. So once you've got this kind of build with 2 pioneers, 2 MGs, and 2 Grens, what I would recommend next is a couple of options you could do. Is you could go for the infantry officer quarters, which is giving Vet 1 to all of your tier 1 units. So if I buy this right now from tier 1, does cost 35 for you, so you've got to bear that in mind. Everything gets Vet 1 from tier 1 and tier 0. Tier 0 is your HQ, so that will also be your Kettenkrad if you decide to make a Kettenkrad later on, which I do recommend actually, but we'll get into that in a minute. And you'll see if you can hover over your machine guns, they will gain veterancy ability, they gain 10 health. The Grenadiers gain 10% harder hit. They'll also gain access to their med kits. Pioneers will gain access to 50% harder hit. So generally, it's a good buy to get. Alternatively, you could skip going for the infantry quarters to tech up to tier 2 faster. So we get ourselves tier 2. I generally would go for tier 2 next. Noticing how I'm building my tier structures at the edge of the base. The reason why I'm doing this is so that when I build a new squad, they're closer to the front line, and therefore they're going to get involved in the fighting sooner, which is always recommended. Your squads are going to retreat back to here, and they'll reinforce around your base HQ. And also when they retreat, when they're healed up, and as they're going out of the base, they'll be able to take reinforcement from the radius of these buildings as well. So if you built all your tier structures right at the back, right inside your base, you wouldn't be able to reinforce over here, right? You'd only be able to reinforce around maybe this area. So that's another reason why you want to build your tier structures further out towards the front line. The only downside to this is that they do, if you do get base pinned, they are maybe vulnerable to enemy vehicles or support weapons that might try and start shooting these. Anyway, so once you get to tier 2, you'll then be wanting to go for probably the 221. Now, you want to be using the 221 against infantry, support weapons, things like that, trying to get behind machine guns. And then I'd also recommend getting it the radio antenna. It has to be in friendly territory to be able to upgrade that. And you want to try and keep this alive throughout the entirety of the game if you can, because as you see, when it gets the radio antenna upgrade, it gets that kind of vision pulse thing, so you can see enemy units through the fog of war, which I highly recommend. Yeah, and generally is just a good, fairly cheap unit that's good at harassing infantry, especially if you're up against things like Australian sections, which can't do any damage to vehicles. They've got no anti-tank snares, so getting a 221 out, especially if you see that, is pretty good. And as well, if you're up against a dingo as well, the 221 doesn't do a bad job at fending off and killing a dingo. You could potentially go for the AT rifle upgrade, the anti-tank, the 41 anti-tank gun upgrade on this, but generally I'm finding it's not very good. I'd rather leave it as a 221 upgrade. Where you're getting your AT from is from your Shreks, which is where you get a Jaeger out. And with the Jaegers, the first thing you want to do with the Jaegers is as soon as I would only do this once you see a vehicle. I wouldn't upgrade them to a Shrek unless there's a vehicle on the field. So sometimes there might not be any vehicles on the field, but you still want to get Jaegers out, and you'll keep them as a standard 5-man squad until maybe a vehicle pops up, and then that's when you upgrade the Shrek, and then you'll get maybe a couple of these guys. So I'd probably go for at least 2 Jaegers, and you'll be using these guys to hunt down any kind of vehicle. And what I would then do is then also probably get a Flak 30 out. Now, the Flak 30 is a great unit here because it can fight and outrange maybe the Humber. What you'll find is British players will get a Humber, or maybe, Americans will get a Greyhound, and they'll try and kite and maybe do damage to your Shreks before your Shreks can actually line up a shot and shoot. So I'll just demonstrate, guys, why you'll want a Flak 30 in this build, especially if you're up against light vehicles like a Humber, because the Shrek might not be enough if a Humber is being microed by a good player. What I'll do right now is I'll use this Jaeger squad on attack move, pushing towards this Humber position, and I will kite effectively, so the Shrek will not even get a shot off. So what we'll do is we've got the Shrek guy coming in, and then we're using the Humber, and before he can get the Shrek off, you can see he's trying to line the Shrek up. But I'm utilizing the Humber's range here to do damage before the Shrek can actually, because it takes a split second for the Shrek to line up sometimes. And also, if the Shrek's firing at max range, it's not going to be as accurate. But what you'll be up against is British players or generally any kind of player utilizing their max range of a vehicle will kite the Shreks to death like this, okay? So you can see here the Flak 30 has more range than the Humber, right? So if I go to the Humber's max range, right, so that's the Humber, and if I go right there, so the Humber can't hit any of these units from this location, but you can see the Flak 30 can hit the Humber. So this basically allows the Wehrmacht player here to fend off the Humber without the Humber being able to do anything in retaliation here. So if I make this an enemy Humber, maybe move my Shrek, I haven't got line of sight of it, you'll see that the Flak 30 should retaliate here and hit it. And you can see how good the Flak 30 is at killing a Humber, right? Very quickly killed it within a few seconds. So you can see here how important it is to have a Flak 30 in conjunction with your Jaegers in the early game against things like a Humber. Even if that was like a Greyhound as well, the Flak 30 would have had a harder time killing a Greyhound, especially if it's got the armored skirts, but the same thing would apply here. The Flak 30 would be able to keep that Greyhound at bay to stop it from being able to push and kite and pick your guys off at max range. So your Jaegers are there, so you can push those enemy vehicles along with your Flak 30 to fend them off and take map control. You can use them, with ambush as well. They need to be Vet 1, so you can then go for your Luftwaffe quarters upgrade. So this was giving them all Vet 1. And when they get Vet 1, they gain the ability to cloak in cover. and that way you can set up some nice ambushes in case, let's say, an enemy player notices maybe your flak 30 is unsupported, they dive around the back with the Greyhound, but oh no, look, you've got your Shreks here, for ambushing, and then they can fight that. So Shrek's a great way to stop vehicles like the Humber, or maybe a Greyhound diving in on your support weapons like your machine gun. So that's what the Shreks are there for. So now, after we've built all this for our early mid game, we're then going into the late game, and you can do a couple of things here. One option is to go further into tier 2, get your support elements upgrades, and start making maybe whirlwinds for anti-infantry. Maybe your teammate, if you're playing a team game and your teammate hasn't got any anti-air, they didn't get the flat veerling out, maybe going for a whirlwind would be a great answer here to shoot down planes as well as anti-infantry capability. Or maybe you want to go for Marders, your opponent is making Grants or Matildas, things that are maybe slow, that can't really get behind you, or maybe Churchills, then maybe the Marders might be a good option for you here. But I generally would be going for this, maybe if you're behind on fuel. So let's say you're behind on fuel, you'd be going for this option, because these are kind of generally cheaper to go for. But if you're ahead on fuel, this is where I'd be going for your tier 4. You're buying yourself 2 Panzer IVs. Once you've got your second Panzer IV out, then I then would recommend getting side skirts and probably the Panzer Officer headquarters, and you'd be playing with these units for the rest of the match, and try and keep these guys kind of alive and keep picking away at units. This is where the double pioneers will come in useful as well, because as you've got your pioneers, your 2 pioneers, you keep them alive, they'll be there to help repair all your Panzer IVs. And I'd probably recommend getting at least one of these guys with the hazard removal package to increase their repair speed as well. You've at this point in the game with all these units, you've got 89 pop, so you can't afford to get another Panzer IV at this point, but you can go for maybe a Kettenkrad, and I would highly recommend getting a Kettenkrad out. And the reason why you want a Kettenkrad is for vision, right? As you're going for Shreks, you're not gonna have the G43 variant. Right, so if you go for a Jaeger and give them the reconnaissance package, these guys with the reconnaissance package, they can drop a flare in the sky. But if you're going for Shreks, because you kind of need to for your anti-tank capability, you probably won't have this unit out here. So with a Kettenkrad on the field, it's going to be absolutely clutch in providing you and your team vision. You can see, look at the amount of vision you're gaining there. So this is great to give your teammates who have got Stukas targets to shoot. Again, let your MGs giving you vision for your machine guns, so you can see enemy infantry moving in and maybe turn in time to deal with a flank. So you get and then you constantly turn your Kettenkrad towards the danger, and also you could use using the Kettenkrad to cap territories later on the match as well, and also laying mines. So I'd always just generally, especially because it's not even that expensive, 160 manpower and only 2 population cap. It's just a must in any Wehrmacht player's build. Always get a Kettenkrad at a certain point. The reason why you might don't want to get the Kettenkrad maybe right at the start of the game is because the Kettenkrad is not a combat unit, and therefore it's kind of maybe neutering your kind of early game potential and your firepower, because you won't get that. If you go for the Kettenkrad, you're not going to have that kind of unit that's going to be able to fight against maybe the Dingo dive on your machine gun. If you go for double pioneers, however, then you have that extra pioneer that can maybe protect a Dingo. If the Dingo was to flank in on your machine gun early game, you've got your pioneer squad there that can maybe push into that Dingo, get behind it to do damage. If you've got a Kettenkrad, it can't do any of that, right? It can't help. Might be able to lay a mine, but it's very hard to get an early mine down and for it to pay off as the Wehrmacht straight away in the game. A good allies player will be wary of a Kettenkrad and thinking there may be a mine nearby and things like that, so you don't generally want to go for a Kettenkrad that early in the game. So right now we're 91 pop, and then the next kind of, so we haven't actually gone into the Terror Battlegroup here, so what I'll do after this, I'd be going, so you go machine gun, and then my next choice probably would be go for the Interrogate. We'll be using this constantly during a match, so let's just say, what we'll do here is we'll put in maybe an American position here. We'll go up here and use the ability. So when we're doing this ability, you see it takes a little bit of time to interrogate somebody. And you can see there's that pulse ability that goes out. And that allows us to see enemy units in the fog of war. So we can see there's 2 enemy units there. We know they're kind of 2 infantry units or 2 support units. We don't know what type they are until we get close. It'll also ping enemy vehicles as well. And as you see, while we do this ability, as it's taking some time, during the time it takes us to do this ability, guys, we're actually going to be a lot more vulnerable. So you want to make sure that you kind of like interrogate these guys while there are no more enemies around that can focus that squad while they're doing the interrogation, because they're super vulnerable while they do that. And as we do that, you notice that we are actually gaining a chunk of veterancy down here as well. So if you've got a lot of casualties on the field, always good idea to try and beat those guys up, interrogate them, and gain veterancy. If you're not quick enough, by the way, guys, these guys will despawn.
Rest later. We have captured duties.
So you can see those guys just disappeared there. So after the interrogate, I generally personally prefer going for the propaganda leaflet drop.
Propaganda bombs shall send the enemy cowering.
So with in conjunction with the Kettenkrad here, I'll just show you here that it will also force its anti-tank gun back. We gain vision here now. We've dropped this ability here. So for 20 seconds, it'll be active for. And if they don't move out of this zone within 3 seconds, they are going to retreat back. And even this anti-tank gun here will be forced back to base and retreat back to base. So that's a really nice little trick there you can do with that to force anti-tank guns. It won't work on 17-pounders, but a nice ability there. And kind of cheap at only 110 munitions. And it covers a fairly big area. You'll see that propaganda leaflet drop will also pretty much fully cover a victory point as well. So it'll deny your opponent, capping that for 20 seconds at least as well. So if the VPs are super low, that's a good clutch ability to maybe help you win the game or stop your opponent from capturing a victory point. After that, I've been then going for the V1.
We shall crush the enemy with the V1 rocket strikes.
So V1, big area. When I left click, you'll hear a very distinctive audio sound. But before I do that, I will just put some units in here. So here we have a lot of units here, and now we have the V1 available. If we drop the V1 directly on top of these units, you should have heard a very specific launch noise there.
Strike on the way. Brace for impact.
During the heat of a battle, the rumbling of this engine could be easily lost by allied players. And you can see here, basically, whatever it hits, it will directly kill. I think the only unit that might not die to this might be a full health Black Prince. But either way, it will just demolish whatever unit is there. It doesn't matter what it is, it will, you know, if it does survive, it's going to be severely crippled with hardly any life left anyway. And then it'll allow you to easily finish it off. So the V1 for 250 munitions is a great ability to have to dominate on the battlefield and take out some high-valued units. And again, this is why the Kettenkrad is so good, because it allows you to gain that vision of this area without maybe your opponent knowing that they've been spotted. A lot of people, what they might do is might make it super obvious that they're going to drop a V1 somewhere, right? They'll see this blob of units, they'll push an infantry squad forward, drop the V1, and then back away. And that's just so obvious that that V1's being dropped, right? In that kind of area where there might be a lot of units. So an allied player is going to immediately just reverse back, right? However, if you're using a Kettenkrad to spot, they might not know where the V1's going to land. Right, because they can't see the Kettenkrad, because the Kettenkrad's got that such great vision, you can basically get that kind of snipe vision to be able to drop this this V1 in. And also, guys, when using a V1, you want to be utilizing it when there's a lot of action going on multiple different parts of the map, if possible, because that way you'll keep your opponent guessing constantly. Oh, has he dropped it over here? Has he dropped it on the right? Has he dropped it center? So you don't want to ever be using the V1 when there's only a single engagement happening. The only time you might want to do that is, again, let's say VPs are super low, your opponent's trying to capture the VP, you might want to drop the V1 on the VP. You can see it completely covers that victory point and then some. And also, like, instead of dropping directly on your opponent's units as they are currently, you could drop them behind your opponent. So I had I'll pop a clip in on a match that I had earlier on, where I V1'd my opponent's Pershing, and I kind of predicted where he would retreat to. He would retreat to his engineers. So I didn't drop the V1 directly on the Pershing. I dropped it behind where I think he was going to go to escape the V1. And lo and behold, my play worked, and I was able to take out that Pershing. So, you know, sometimes it's better to maybe drop the V1, maybe behind or maybe in front of where your opponent's going to be, because a lot of people will expect the V1 to drop just exactly where the units are currently at and not where they're going to be. So maybe pop the V1 behind or even forward. If you think your opponent, depending on how you feel like your opponent's going to play, are they going to be aggressive and push past the V1? Do they think they're going to be strong enough to push past? Maybe put the V1, maybe be more defensive with the V1. Or if you think they're going to retreat away, pop the V1 further behind them. So that's what I would do there when using the V1. Then I'd probably go, because you would want to save up a lot of your munitions, guys, for the V1, since it's so goddamn powerful. I would generally, like, For the Father One is a decent ability, but I'd probably just go straight for No Quarter. Even though I don't rate No Quarter that highly, I'd probably would go for that because you want to be spending all your munitions onto the V1, and then maybe the prop war if to force a retreat if the timing on that works better for you. And then once you've done that, I guess you've got access to the King Tiger. But yeah, the King Tiger, 24 pop cap for it. It literally it's a quarter of your entire army to call this onto the field, and it's just so expensive. You can literally have pretty much 2 Panzer IVs for the same population cap as a Tiger, and the Panzer IVs are faster, cheaper to replace. They can get out of combat much easier than a King Tiger if they get in trouble. So yeah, I would definitely recommend Panzer IVs over the King Tiger because it's just such a slow unit, and also you get that minus 50% fuel income for some unknown reason. That is what Relic have decided to add with this, when I just don't think it even needs that. Compared to like the King Tiger of Company Heroes 2, guys, the King Tiger of Co 3 is just woefully inadequate and just not as good. Only Event 1, it gets this like a passive ability. 25% damage reduction on frontal armor hits is all it gets. Doesn't get, like in KO2, there was an ability where it had Spearhead, which gave it a bit more range in the front, and it kind of locked the turret in like a certain like angle in front of itself. But it kind of, there was kind of drawback because it did gain the vision and the extra range in front, but it couldn't turn its turrets. You would need to turn it around a bit more. So it was kind of better in that regard there. And also, obviously, OKW King Tiger go up to efficiency 4 and 5. So generally, it was just a lot better. And also didn't come with this ridiculous fuel nerf to you. So I'm expecting what will hopefully happen in the future when it comes to the King Tiger. They will remove this stupid fuel drain on it. Because I just don't think it's required at all. Because I don't think the King Tiger is that, you're already like putting in so much of your army value and your resource into such a big unit. Why, do you need this fuel drain as well? It just doesn't make any sense. And, if it gets crippled, it gets engine snared, what ends up happening is the King just gets swarmed with a lot of like light mediums like Crusaders or things like that, or Hellcats get behind it, and then it's just a sitting duck. If a P-47 is used on it, it'll get absolutely slaughtered. So, and it won't be able to easily get out of a P-47 strafing run strike either. So I just do not rate the King Tiger. I won't go for this unless I'm maybe memeing around and I've got the resources for it, and maybe I lose a Panzer IV, my population cap works out that I've got a bit of space to call it on, maybe then I'll call it onto the field. But still, I much prefer much more mobile Panzer IVs that, do basically the same thing as a King Tiger. They don't hit as hard as a King Tiger, but they kill armor, they kill infantry. That's good enough for me. And if I lose one, it's not the end of the world. I can replace it. As long as a King Tiger, I'm going to be feeling that, because that is a huge amount of resources. 800 manpower and 180 fuel into calling one of those things onto the field. That's so much manpower for it. It's just, yeah, it's over twice the cost of manpower compared to like 2 Panzer IVs. So this is your general like late game build then. You'll have all of these units. You've still got 9 population cap to spare here, with maybe going for other things. So I would be thinking possibly anything else you're lacking, you can maybe fill the gap with. Maybe you want another Shrek out, so you can get yourself another Jaeger out. Maybe you want another Gren. Maybe you want a mortar out for some smoking, more smoking ability. You do the Jaegers have the ability to smoke, which is quite nice. You've got some smoke utility there. But maybe you fancy a smoke from the base and a mortar. We'll also have the ability to drop a flare for vision as well. So you might want to get a mortar with this build as well. But it's kind of however you fancy. Whatever you're lacking, you can kind of get any kind of unit there to supplement your build. But this is generally what you want. The only thing this build is lacking, as it stands, is some solid indirect fire. And I guess you could maybe go for tier 3 and get yourself a Nebelwerfer out. So you do have exactly enough manpower, or population cap I should say, to get a Nebelwerfer out if you wanted to. So in a 1v1 setting, maybe you want to side tech to get yourself a Nebelwerfer. But generally, I would be relying on my DAC player's Stuka to be doing that indirect fire damage, because the Stuka is a lot better than the Nebelwerfer at smashing units and wiping squads. But if you need to get your own indirect fire, you still have enough population cap to get yourself a Nebelwerfer out if you want to. But generally, yeah, this is pretty good standard Wehrmacht build here. And other upgrades, you'll probably want to get yourself maybe the medical upgrade at your HQ. Probably get yourself a bunker down for, again, forward medics out if you wanted to go for forward at that. If you want forward reinforcement and forward healing, you can get that. Later on, you maybe even want a repair bunker down as well. So there's other things you can do later on as well to keep buffing and improving yourself up, and obviously, you know, get all the training upgrades from all your buildings as well. So guys, that's the end of the video. I hope you found this build all really useful and you take it into your Co3 matches as Wehrmacht and win some games. And yeah, if you enjoyed the video, please do consider leaving the video a like, maybe comment. Is there a way you'd maybe use this battle group yourself, which is different to the way I use it? Please let me know, I'm curious. And yeah, I hope to catch you in the next video, guys. Take care, see you soon.